Good afternoon and welcome to Election Watch, your trusted source for coverage and in-depth analysis of the Namibian elections 2024. I am Diana Master and I'm joined by Toivo Njebela. How are you doing?
Hi, very good, Diana. Thank you for having me on the
thank you
platform.
for joining us.
Sure.
Yes, because you are one of the numbers guys. We're going to be talking statistics today, a lot of them.
Yeah, I'm not the numbers guy, but
For today you are.
But I think we can comprehend. I do comprehend a few that has popped up today.
Okay, so we can trust on you.
yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's discuss, voter turnout and growth. 589,151 voters have been collated in 66 constituencies, which had 826,409 registered voters.
Yeah. So, I mean, voting continues. We have now passed the half mark of the constituencies. You remember we have 121 of them across the country. If we have, you said 66 there.
Yes.
Yeah. So we are well over the 50% mark, and what we have seen is a trend emerging throughout. Because we were using last week, for example, we were using a very small sample, and we didn't want to really make any conclusions yet based on just that small sample, but you could now see real trends and patterns emerging from what has come out. The ruling party, as expected, dominating rural regions, struggling a little bit in urban centers like commerce here. But those numbers will be on the screen now just to show. But one of the things that will be emerging when we screen those numbers is the fact that because SWAPO went into this election. Okay, let me just first say that SWAPO is actually winning this election, but not as emphatically as they had hoped, because the party was hoping to regain its two-thirds majority, and it doesn't look like they are anywhere close to that.
In your headline today, in the Namibian side said they're limping.
Yeah, they're limping
towards
only
the finish line.
Or they're only limping towards that. Netuma and Nandaitwa are doing much better than the party, but the party, which is key here in terms of regaining the two-thirds majority, because that two-thirds majority only applies to the party, not to the presidential election, because you have to win good numbers in parliament. SWAPO is hovering around 55% of the votes now. So let's look at those numbers.
Yes, so this is the Kavango East region. If we actually take a look at it, SWAPO's support fell dramatically from 2014, as you can see, rather from 2019, because it was 80.69%, and now in 2024, 58.35%. So although, yes, the voters' numbers have gone up. In 2019, it was 30,104 people that voted, and this year it was 31,025 people that have voted, but we can see the dramatic drop.
Yeah. And this is where people are not paying attention. If you confine yourself to the actual numbers, the digits, you are making and ignore the proportional meaning of it. That is where the biggest mistake is coming. I saw, for example, let's just keep that slide there. I saw, for example, that in Karas region, one of the regions that have declared their full results, SWAPO has done better. But collectively the opposition is still holding more votes than the ruling party, and people are celebrating, and I'm saying people in SWAPO are celebrating, thinking because SWAPO has the highest number of votes per individual party, they are ignoring that the majority of the rest of these things actually are within the opposition hands, and that is very, very difficult. So let's look at Karas there.
Let's look at Karas. So back in 2019, 45.49%, and there was a total of 14,923 voters. Now in 2024, 19,439 voters, and you can see that it dropped from 45.49% to 41.11%. And again, I think people tend to look at the numbers to say, oh no, but this time around more people voted. Yes, more people voted, but again, the support is dropping.
Because more people means so many things, especially in an election where you are not confined to your constituency. Like unlike next year in the local authority and regional council election, where you need to be based in your own constituency where you are registered. Here, if this election had found me in Kietmans, I could have voted for my the party of my choice there. But so look at 2014 already. 72% for the ruling party, 45 in 5 years later,
yes.
And now we are here. So the mistake is us focusing more on the numbers and rather than the entire picture, whether you are growing as a political party in that part of the country or you are not. And clearly, the ruling party is losing support as much as it's leading in that part of as an individual party. So Commerce region again.
Let's look at Commerce region and keep in mind that this is not the final, but Commerce is actually a little over 70% done. So looking at the results from 2014, 96,786 voters, 73.93%. In 2019, 64,465 registered voters, 47.59%. And then 2024, the numbers just keep dropping, 37.43% from 47.59 in 2019.
So so again, an important disclaimer that Commerce, the results are not yet in fully. Of course, we are above the 70% mark. I know that one of the key constituencies, which is Windhoek West, is not yet in. I can't remember the second one, but there's another. John Pandeni, as a matter of fact. John Pandeni is another one that is not yet in. But very, very concerning for the ruling party, especially if this trend continues into the election next year, when the local authority at Windhoek, the Windhoek municipality, for example, parties are now fighting for seats. These numbers will make a lot of difference. So we have a problem of declining support for the ruling party, and the focus here is really on the ruling party because SWAPO is just a different level. The opposition come and go, they fluctuate a lot. The ruling party has been in power since 1990, and their numbers are just like that. Walk us through Ohangwena.
Ohangwena, back in 2014, 98,884 voters registered, and that was 90.86%. 2019, 82.78% with 85,846 registered voters. And then this year, again, a drop in numbers, 74.4%.
Yeah. I suppose there are still more, some pending results for Ohangwena also?
Yes, because Ohangwena, I understand, is also slightly over 70% done.
Yeah.
Yes. So the problem now is, I think, rather not the problem, but I think what we're seeing is particularly the youth.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So Ohangwena might come through. You must remember Ohangwena, this is also the home region of the SWAPO Vice President. And even if it was not, it's just generally a very strong base for the ruling party, as it is in Umsati, as it is in parts of Oshikoto and Oshana, but particularly Umsati region and Ohangwena region, those are the strongest ones. Oshana is a metropolitan region with Ongwediva, Ondangwa, and Oshagati. It's not too rural. People there, the patterns have been a bit different. Oshikoto, I suppose, because Joba Mpanda, for example, the AR leader comes from there. Dr. Panduleni Tula is also has his roots in Oshikoto, although he's a Windhoek guy. So those regions are not, again, SWAPO is still dominating those regions. But yeah, look at Oshikoto right now.
Yes.
Also,
back in 2014, there were 73,843 voters, and it was 90.95%. But now if we look at 2024, only 70%, and a total of 27,114.
Yeah. So Oshikoto is still continuing. I think there are a few pending outcomes. We don't know whether there will be enough to match the 2019 levels, because there are still 6, nearly 7% there.
Yes.
Insofar as that is concerned.
But
yeah,
looking at just the drastic change, back in 2014, 73,843 people voted for SWAPO.
Yeah.
And then now in 2024, only 27,114 people voted for SWAPO.
Yeah, because in fact, because logically you would think that the population of a region has also increased in the last 10 years. And you ought to see, you would want to, as a SWAPO, you would want to see some growth also in the number of individual votes, and that is not happening right now. Partly, perhaps also because of the issues that we've had, and I think we'll of course get into those. We are now looking. Things about ECN, how many people were not able to vote, but let's look at Zambezi.
Looking at Zambezi, 23,124 people voted for SWAPO back in 2014. And then in 2019, the number dropped slightly to 17,263. And then now in 2024, only 11,659 people voted. So we can see that it dropped from 77.62% to 56.04%. I see now what you're saying about the limping.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it would be still a comfortable SWAPO lead, but not by their standards, but not by standards that they are used to. So it's a limp, really. I couldn't have found a better word in my poor vocabulary to describe what is happening right now. It's a party that is not used to this kind of numbers. It's not a party that is used to this declining pattern from 77%. 78 essentially in 10 years ago to just over 56%. Again, I am thinking here that Zambezi is still continuing with counting, but I do not foresee, because 74% is just too much to catch up with if you are using that number there.
Now looking at Hardap, back in 2014, 18,199 voted for SWAPO. And then now in 2024, only 12,228 people voted. And this is dropping to 39.08%. Again, these are not the final results. But I think this is the pattern that we're going to see continue.
Yeah. So Hardap is, we've seen actually some gains in some of the constituencies for SWAPO. I mean, as you can see, there are 10,000 people in 2014, and this year they are already at 12. Is it that 12?
So this year is 12,228, yes.
Yeah, in terms of the individual votes, they have picked up a little bit, but proportionally, percentage-wise, they are still actually on a decline, on a declining motion. So very, very typical of what we have seen throughout this election. And for me, the fact that this is happening also particularly in the Ohangwena region, because Ohangwena region, you expect it to be the one really rallying behind SWAPO, given the fact that the presidential candidate is a native of that region. But still, you can still, they're on a slippery
slippery slope.
Yes.
Let's actually just round up, or rather summarize the SWAPO's performance so far. So SWAPO's vote count in the 66 constituencies increased by 6%, but did not match the 24% total voter growth, and the majority in these constituencies fell to 55.3% in 2024, down from 73.3% back in 2019. SWAPO has lost 18% of its total percentage votes in these constituencies, but maintains a majority, and the 6% growth in votes was critical for SWAPO to avoid its majority falling below 50%.
Yeah. So there's one thing that I wrote in my editorial today, and I said that the ruling party is winning, and this is not a vote of confidence. If I was SWAPO, I would be very gracious in my victory. I will be very humble. I will accept this result with humility, because there are serious signals that are coming out of this result. I expected, like most Namibians, that SWAPO was going to win this election. There was never a question about SWAPO losing the election necessarily. But we expected this kind of results where there's some sort of decline. And that is not just things that we just make up, we just woke up thinking that way. It's because we observe what has happened, particularly in the past 5 years in the country. There's nothing in particular that stood out that you say this and that in terms of socio-economic interventions suffices to actually give the party a proper mandate. There are many problems in the country, and SWAPO, what I said in my editorial today, I'm saying that it's a benefit of the doubt result to say maybe the alternatives are not very clear. I mean, who do you want to entrust the country with? Is it the devil that you know, or the angel that you don't?
Or the angel that you don't, exactly.
So I think it's a benefit of the doubt to say we'll give you another chance now to prove yourself, and then if you don't do that, then we'll see how we are going to deal with you in 2029.
Okay, so right now, as you can see there at the bottom on our ticker, these are just results from the latest results, the last 10 constituencies that we received in the last 24 hours. And then on the right side of the screen there, you'll see the National Assembly 2024 votes for the different parties. All right, now, Toivo, just bringing it back now, because recently, opposition parties are saying that they're standing behind the IPC's decision to legally challenge the elections, no matter the outcome. So how significant is this level of unity among opposition parties in shaping the post-election process?
Yeah, so the problem with, the problem with the opposition going into this election, everybody, the word on everybody's lips going into this election, as far as the opposition is concerned, was fragmentation, the scatteredness of these political parties. I was very, very surprised and perhaps disappointed to some extent to see a full war between particularly IPC and affirmative repositioning, attacking each other. And then there were some fake videos created to put PDM into a bad, like mocking PDM and stuff like that. Yes, in a
bad light, yes.
Yes. So you can't now suddenly want to become buddies now. You were bashing each other, and now that things are going the way they are, suddenly you want to sit around the same table and look each other in the eye to come up with a strategy. Unity should have
happened way before.
Yes, because now it's just a unity of convenience.
Yes.
And that is not good enough. That's why we see now, for example, that AR and LPM, I think those are the only two parties that have stayed away from the IPC plan to challenge this election. I see that the Republican Party, PDM, and others are with IPC in this matter, which is a valid argument that they are making. Is not, but I'm just saying that in terms of unity, they ought to have been united. You don't have to really be behind one candidate, as some people have said. I don't really believe in those kind of things, because you can't just have a common candidate because you don't like SWAPO or whatever. It must be, you must be thinking alike. There are parties, for example, your radical leftist parties like AR and LPM, you could say that the ideological alienation is quite the same. But if you have a party like PDM, which is a very centralist party in terms of ideology, and then suddenly you want to team up with them, it's just for convenience. I don't believe in that.
You don't, but we'll discuss that a little later on.
Yeah.
For now, let's actually take a look at this video that is from way back in July, when President Angolo Mbumba met with the Electoral Commission of Namibia to discuss the challenges overshadowing the general voter registration process. President Angolo Mbumba called on the Electoral Commission of Namibia to allow Namibians to register wherever they're based, to make it easy for them to register to vote. State House also explained that SWAPO Secretary General Sophia Shaning was part of the presidential delegation with the Electoral Commission of Namibia because she is a member of Parliament and a member of the Namibian cabinet in a standing invitation. Let's have a look.
Our aim is for everybody who is able to register to come and register, so that they are able to come and vote. It's not a partisan exercise. We consider it a national duty. Then there are the issues of municipal bills, which tie us to a particular place where we stay. And there are people who are advising us that since this is just going to be presidential and national elections, if somebody showed up, get his registration card, but it does not indicate the locality where they stay, will they not be, should they not be allowed to register for this year's elections? The other thing is, as I said, I'm reporting what we are getting. The issue of mobile teams, prominently especially in rural areas. They go somewhere, they stay a number of hours, they move on. But at the same time, our equipment are not as quick as the time allocated, and maybe we are not also, I'm using the we, the royal we, the officials are not so well versed with operating them that it takes longer time than we have planned.
Election Watch is where you are at. For more latest results, please visit our website, elections.my.na, and the numbers will be popping up as we get them. All right, now speaking of President Ngolo Mbumba, he recently stated during a visit by the African Union Electoral Observation Mission that the Electoral Commission of Namibia should not be blamed for the chaos surrounding the elections, saying the job is bigger than any one institution. How do you interpret the president's statement, and then who should take responsibility for the challenges?
Yeah, I think the president is completely wrong. He was actually shocked that that is his way of thinking. You can't have a situation like the one that we have and simply shield ECN as if they're some sort of angels. Mm-hmm. They have blundered big time. There's plenty of evidence about how their behavior have actually excluded so many Namibians from partaking in this election, and the president saying that there are more institutions. I don't know who else could have
taken the blame.
Could have actually done what didn't happen. Mm-hmm. We know that the police who are escorting ballot papers are on the ball. The police have protected us. The political parties have availed themselves. So when you are pointing fingers, and when you talk about political parties, it's just at least not just the opposition, contrary to popular belief. Even SWAPO is not happy with the ACC. I mean,
ECN.
ECN.
Yes.
To the extent that I was getting calls on Saturday night from my friends in SWAPO who were saying, but you know what is happening here. So nobody across the entire spectrum is happy. So for the president to say that, and he says, he actually said, the shortage of ballot papers is unacceptable. Mm-hmm. He clearly says that. Mm-hmm. And as far as you and I know, that is the sole territory of ECN. Mm-hmm. So now to talk about multiple institutions that could have been involved in the distribution of ballot papers or whatever his interpretation is completely out of order. And I thought it was a very unfortunate comment.
All right. Now, of course, the ECN, like you're saying, was presiding over a process that was marred by inadequate ballot papers, insufficient polling stations, and even malfunctioning tablets. Do you think this is simply a case of mismanagement, or are there deeper systemic issues at play?
Yeah, so my view is that a lot of wrong things happened. Mm-hmm. We were just showing people that meeting at State House where the SWAPO Secretary General sat. She was the only party, SWAPO was the only party represented in that meeting.
Yes.
These things shape perceptions. Mm-hmm. When you behave that way, you don't just dismiss it. It will be carried into the election and people will be talking about it. And that meeting has been a central talking point of this election, to say, what was it about? Because they create, even where there is really no, now in the election itself, we don't know whether people talk about, oh, the elections, the votes were stolen or whatever. I don't personally believe that there's been rigging in the conventional sense of the word. But I think the behavior of ECN has influenced outcomes. People are asking, for example, how do you extend voting only in selected areas and without the consultation of political parties who represent the Namibian people in this process? Because I couldn't have been at ECN myself as a voter, but the party or candidate that I'm voting for is there. So you can't do that. So this trend and pattern of behavior of ECN has only helped cement perceptions that things were done underhand, even perhaps where none of that has happened. And the legal action that is being threatened by IPC and others is about also the legality, the constitutionality of extending this voting period.
Yes.
Whether it was really done according to the confines of the Constitution, or it was in consultation with who. Because unfortunately, the person who makes these decisions is the president of the country, who ironically was the Secretary General of SWAPO not too long ago. So those linkages, those will never just die away like that. So you have to be very, very careful how you approach these things, be inclusive, so that you defeat any future perceptions that now are engulfing us where we are in this moment.
Speaking of that extension of voting, critics, including lawyers and civil society groups, are arguing that the president's use of Section 64 of the Electoral Act is a quote-unquote misinterpretation of the law. How significant are these legal challenges to the overall credibility of the election? Yeah,
so I don't know what those acts say. I've seen experts who said that, who mentioned something about the 15-day period to say that if you are going to declare something like that, it has to be done at least 15 days in advance.
Not on the day of voting.
Yes, because you can't. What happened, it was on Thursday night. Thursday night is when we were told that voting will continue on Friday morning and Saturday morning. Imagine you are a political party that wants to know, you want to protect the credibility of this election, you want to send your agents to these areas, Oshikoto region, Kunene region, and you're just told in that moment, at night on Thursday, that voting will continue in the morning. So it's all these things, even if they were legal, the fairness is just not there. It's like calculated moves to influence the outcome of this election. That's why I'm saying that people that are talking about the election being rigged or whatever shouldn't, it's not in the old way of doing things. When people say, oh, ballot boxes were stuffed with extra papers, or people erased with that cross with an eraser. Those are the old tricks those are the old ways of rigging elections. Right now, you can do things just unfairly, legal perhaps, but unfairly to disadvantage some people. Then in the entire picture, it becomes unconstitutional, it's illegal itself.
I mean, election authorities themselves have been criticized for excluding key stakeholders in decision making, and we'll get back to that. But I just wanted to give our viewers a quick update that our results to date do not have any of the extended votes. But as soon as we have those, again, elections.my.na is where you can catch all of those statistics. Now back to what I was saying about election authorities being criticized for excluding key stakeholders in decision making and for poor communication with political parties during the process. How critical is stakeholder involvement for electoral transparency?
No, so transparency is actually the most important thing. But also you include people to preempt future accusations like the ones that are here now. You ought to have said, comrades, you were part and parcel of this decision. We sat in that meeting for 4 hours. We reached consensus. We did what we agreed. So you cannot now turn around later and say that things are not done correctly because you were part of this decision. But how do people own up to decisions that they were not part of, that were excluded from, and then suddenly you just say, oh, we have decided for you. Remember, this election is not for ECN. In fact, you could go a step further and say this election is not even a process of political parties. This process belongs to the people of Namibia.
Yes.
So if you are not including their representatives in decisions like this, you are completely ignoring the people of Namibia and their sovereign right to a fair election, and that is a problem. These problems couldn't be happening right now if you had just included people, make the process inclusive, and say, we own these processes and these decisions together, all of us. That did not happen.
Now back to the legality of, the whole situation, and of course the IPC threatening legal action. What legal grounds do you think the IPC and its allies might use? Because of course, again, I'm speaking from a position of knowing that you are not a legal, practitioner. So what legal grounds do you think the IPC and its allies might use to challenge these elections?
Yeah, so I've seen IPC Secretary General speaking on South African television over the weekend, talking about, in fact, IPC sent out some notice asking people, and they even created an email where people can send all the evidence of irregularities that they might have seen during the process. That is one element. But for me, the constitutionality of the legality of the extension is problematic. They might be able to say, what does the Constitution say about extending this thing? Because people are saying it must be done 15 days in advance, there must be a public holiday declared, and none of that happened with this period, especially on Friday. Saturday, of course, was a weekend. But, so they must prove to the court, if they can prove, that yes, the decision of the president was wrong. And I think there will be a huge debate about what you said earlier about the interpretation of the act.
Yes.
They must interpret it to the court to say, this is our understanding of the act, and the other side says, this is our understanding of the act, because ECN are arguing that they have done everything according to the book. And the court must then decide whose interpretation is actually legally sound.
Yes.
If these parties win, especially on the extension of the election, what might happen, I'm being a devil's advocate here, is that the court might say the results from those new polling stations
now,
will be disregarded completely. And then we just go with the results from the 27th of November. And whoever participated in those extra things, their votes will be lost. That is, if IPC and their partners win, that is what I foresee.
Okay.
I do not foresee an entire election result being annulled.
I see. All right. And of course, now speaking about that whole situation of it being null and void, already there were calls, like you were saying, that most parties are actually saying that they're not going to accept these results. But now the ECN is saying that there's no budget for a rerun.
Yeah, that's a funny excuse. Democracy, by its very nature, is a very expensive exercise. Somebody made a comment on social media this morning, I can't remember who, but there's somebody who said, what if a court ruled a rerun of this election? Are you going to use that excuse as a reason not to proceed with implementing the order of the court? You can't. So money, yes, it's true that it's an expensive exercise. That's why people are saying that heads must roll at ECN, because you can't mess up a very important process like that and just shrug your shoulders and say, okay, well, that is what happened. No, there has to be accountability. So if it becomes necessary in the unlikely event that the court orders a rerun of the election, that money has to be found.
Yes, from somewhere.
Yes, if you have to put drought relief money on, if you have to switch it to this exercise, then you will have to do it. Of course, I hope drought is more serious, but I'm sure there are other budget votes that they can
move the money around and find the money for this rerun.
Absolutely.
So now, given the delays and the controversies, how much trust do you think the public places in the current results being announced?
So the result will, remember, even when we had what sounded like very, very transparent elections in the past, already there's been disputes, especially within the losing parties, to say, look, the process was not fair and whatnot. But those elections, I'm thinking of, for example, because I can't remember many elections in which allegations of rigging, for example, or unfair advantage has not been made. This is a seasonal complaint. But there was a big case in 2009 brought by RDP at the time, and it went on for weeks, and the court ended up rapping ECN over the knuckles over the manner in which it has conducted that election, and it gave recommendations on how to fix some of the loopholes that existed at the time. In 2019, Dr. Panduleni Itula, as an independent candidate at the time, lost the election to Dr. Hage Gengob, and lost and brought this application to court, which challenged the use of EVMs, electronic voting machines without a paper trail. He won in that sense because the court ordered that those machines may no longer be used unless and until that function of a paper trail has been inserted in those machines. So that has never happened since then. So I picked up something this morning, the feeling among young people. And Aldo Horn, our colleague, will give us a story that will appear in tomorrow's papers, where he's quoting young people who are demoralized at the manner in which this, especially first-time voters, to say, oh, this whole fuss about participating in election, this is actually how it happens. Those of us who have voted for a number of years now know that there's been better ones before. Yes. But these young people who are participating for the first time, and that is the first experience that they're getting, how do you encourage them to be motivated to participate in the future?
The next ones, yes,
so
exactly.
What is at stake here is not just what is appearing in front of our eyes. There are deeper cutting issues that are emerging out of this mess, and ECN must be held accountable in whatever way that it must happen.
Yes, and now Itula, Dr. Panduleni Itula, actually had a lot to say regarding ballot papers. Let's have a look.
They are working here. We have some of our colleagues that also originate from Kavango East or Kavango West. For regional councils and local authorities, their interest lies there. But if you look at how our voters register is compiled, it's compiled on constituency basis. So meaning if they are here and they only want to register for presidential and national assembly elections, which is this year, they are resident here because they are working here. They're only going home at intervals of holidays or once a year. It's still the choice of the voter where they want to register. But come next year, if they want to vote where they originate from, they have to be registered there.
It is very clear that the whole arrangement was things being perfect. I live here, I register here, and I'm going to vote here. But life is more complicated than that. Therefore, we have still to make sure that every citizen who is here, let them register. And if they still think that their home is, if I want to go and vote in Kwisevnu, Wolfers Bay, then I make sure that next year I go there and register. But we are, our encouragement is, let us register, let us have that card. Give us the power to vote now and to vote next year, because we cannot afford to, but let the voters then be informed what is possible and what is not possible. Yeah.
We do apologize for that. That was actually from a briefing that the Electoral Commission of Namibia had with the President, Dr. Nangolo Mbumba. All right, now earlier on I did say Dr. Panduleni Itula had a lot to say about ballot papers. Here's the video.
Almost every hole that they used to travel to steal their votes, we have secured every ballot box that came in this country from the factory. We have secured them as soon as the voting is taking place. It will be counted there. And be ready to make sure that on the 28th of November, you are ready to pop that cork out of the bottle of champagne and celebrate the victory.
Elections.my.na is where you can catch all the latest presidential and National Assembly results. And let's actually take a look at a few of those 2024 National Assembly election results as they stand. Constituencies done 66 out of 121. Total votes were 589,154. SWAPO taking 326,045 of those. IPC in second with 111,986. And LPM 38,046. Looking at the region totals, well, rather for now, the presidential elections, for the presidential election results, Nandi Ndaitwa 57.75%. Total votes for the presidential elections were 614,616. Ndaitwa taking 354,914 of those. Itula in second with 159,760. And SWAPO 36,987. And if you look below there, those are the region totals. As I mentioned earlier, Nandi Ndaitwa with 57.75% of those votes.
Yeah, so yes, that's what we said. I mean, I thought should be doing slightly better than that, because, like I said, you know, she's doing much better than the party, and she just needs the final result must reflect at least more than 50%. If she gets 50.5, for argument's sake, she's a winner. So she and when you look at Dr. Itula, who is the second in that list, is very far, but of course the system doesn't just look at Itula, it will also look at how much your Joban Pandas and Swart Boys and Venanis got, and whether that is now still less than 51%. In that case, then Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah is declared a clear winner. And she seems to be limping.
Yes, limping to the finish line.
Towards the finish line. So she's not very much troubled. I think the problem is with the party itself, which will also win, but with a very marginal number. As it appears.
Yes. Now, earlier on, you were talking about how, you know, particularly the young people were complaining and saying the election and this is what we faced. What are we going to do for the next one? Now, actually, former Ombudsman John Walters and others have actually questioned the fairness of the elections, citing selective extensions, as we mentioned earlier. Like, what was the criteria of actually these polling stations? Because the ECN never provided clarity on what grounds they used to extend voting to these particular polling stations. And then, of course, inadequate facilities, suppressed result announcement. Do these logistical failures point to incompetence, or could there be more deliberate actions at play?
Yeah. So I mean, the most baffling of all that extension of voting decision was the fact that Commerce Region, which had so many people, more than 100,000 people left out on the 27th of November without voting. I think Oshana was given 12 of those without voting. I think Oshana was given 12 of those. Or was it Kunene? The journalist and the journalist is asking questions, and the man is just walking away. And then he closes the door. That office is not his house. It's a national office. And once the questions come with the territory. Once you are in that position, once you accept and sign the contract that you want to do this job, that job comes with a responsibility of communicating also timeously, correctly, and honestly.
And you know, even this arrogance was showcased yesterday when that question was brought up of the rerun and them just shutting down the question completely and saying, no, there's no budget for it.
Yeah.
And then basically saying, we will cross that bridge should we get there. It seems as though the ECN itself is already confident that, you know, these results that's it, we are not going to do anything else. And this is upsetting the public, especially because, like you're saying, that arrogance.
What should have happened if budget was an issue? What should have happened was consult political parties, tell them, yes, there were shortages, there were challenges, but this is the cut-off time because we simply do not have the budget to go to day 2 nationwide. But you can't have convenient budget only for those selected places. But in Windhoek, for example, the budget did not exist. You can't have the capital city, the largest region in the country, having only one polling station. And somehow we might just understand, we might just say that that is a logical. No, it's a very suspicious decision. But if it was a collective one, maybe we could say, okay, it's a poor decision, but everybody participated in it. When it's just a few men and women in a boardroom who decided this, and then we might just run with it.
Yes, we must just take it lying down. We must just accept.
Very arrogant, very arrogant.
Now, what then do you think the next steps should be for the ECN and opposition parties and even voters to ensure public confidence in the electoral process?
I think the institution that is called ECN must be cleaned up properly. I'm not here to say people must be fired or whatever. I don't think it's my place to say that. But with this current leadership at ECN and with their attitude and with their arrogance and their total disregard for the feelings and the rights of people in this country, it is difficult if their continued presence as the entity with that state of mind will ever restore the confidence of the Namibian people in that very important institution of our country. Remember, we have elections again this time next year.
Yes.
So it's not like, okay, maybe they will self-correct in the next 5 years.
Few months, yeah.
5 years. Because the next cycle is again 5 years from now. We have an election, a very important election next year.
Yeah.
And if these are the people who are going to run it with the same attitude, with the same lack of preparedness, then I don't think you could, as a political party, you could go around and convince people and say, oh, please register again. We have to or show up next year at the polling station. Nobody will be interested in a process that doesn't produce the will of the people.
So you're basically saying, for now, if the ECN is not cleaned up, we could be seeing this same thing happen again next year. A repeat of this year's elections.
Yeah, because I'm not seeing a lot of concession on their part. I'm not seeing them saying, look, we really messed up here and here. We admit.
Does this legal challenge lead to broader reforms in Namibia's electoral system, or is it likely to be a one-off dispute?
So here is the problem. Our country has one of the best constitutions in the world. Everybody generally agrees that we have one of the best constitutions in the world. But if the men and women presiding over these laws, the implementers of these laws, if they are not doing it according to the book, then we are as good as not having those laws in the first place. There's a comment that was made by Professor Joseph Disho yesterday. I think it's in the Namibian Sun newspaper today also. So Joseph Disho says that there's this lazy acceptance of twisting of just ignoring provisions of the law. People just say, okay, fine, it happened, so what, you know. And then the next day it happens again, then it becomes the norm. This passive acceptance of wrong things. He says, for example, that his particular example was what has been happening in the ruling party, where, because SWAPO has one of the best constitutions in town, by far. Yeah, and one of the best internal democratic processes by any political party in Namibia, if people adhere to those. But it has become now a thing of whoever is in power chooses what to implement and what not. And Joseph Disho argues that that is now being transported into the government space now. It's no longer a SWAPO internal attitude of not adhering to the statutes all the time. we are now seeing it being brought, because these are the same people. The leaders of SWAPO are also the leaders of government. And I think they started getting away with it within the party, and now they think they can also get away with this kind of behavior at government level, like the president declaring extension of voting without consulting anyone, and decisions that are announced at night. Nobody can even do anything at that hour. So that is not good behavior, and we really want Netumana Ndaitwah, who seems to be the emerging winner in this election, when she takes over the country, that she takes us back to what we used to be, a law-abiding country where the constitution is the supreme law of the land, and whoever slips outside of the confines of the law, even by an inch, must be held accountable. We can't just say, okay, no, it happened. Yeah, it happens, human errors. No, there are consequences for every action. Reward, carrot and stick. Yeah. So
as you can see on your screens there, again, just to give you a brief roundup, Nandi Ndaitwah is in the lead, 57.75%, total of 354,914 votes, and Dr. Panduleni Itula, 25.99% with 159,760 votes. And then the National Assembly results, SWAPO in the lead with 55.34%, a total of 326,045 votes, and the IPC with 19.01%, a total of 119,986 votes. And this is, of course, 66 constituencies done out of a total of 121.
Yeah. As we speak, the affirmative repositioning movement is also having a press conference where Job Mpanda is also going on about what has happened in this election. And I just wanted to spend maybe a bit of time there, of what remains of our time now, Diana, to also reflect, because we have confined this conversation to SWAPO and IPC mostly, as if other parties do not exist
yes.
at all. But the context is clear. It's really those two. I think it's just important to also mention that the official opposition status seems to be slipping away from the hands of PDM. They are really struggling. They are really struggling. Of course, the extended voting part of that took place. A lot of that took place in Kunene, which used to be the PDM stronghold. But again, the results that came out recently show that SWAPO is gaining ground in Kunene, way ahead of PDM. So we don't know whether the results, the outstanding results of those extra voting, will come to the rescue of PDM. Part of Oshodanjupa region, a very important. This is a very important base for PDM. Oshodanjupa is not out yet fully. In fact, it's one of the slowest results coming out. The Omaheke region also a very strong Herero ethnic base
yes.
for the party. Also not coming out strongly. We don't know whether in the end those will help PDM a little bit. For LPM, they have actually done very well. They are second, they are third on that list. But you could see, if you look on our website, elections.my.na, you could see that AR is busy narrowing the gap between themselves and LPM. So we don't know whether LPM will be able to hold on to that, because the southern regions where it commands a lot of respect, a lot of support, are already done. Their results have been declared. So they must now win elsewhere, especially in Commerce, Vindu Quest that is pending, John Pandeni, part of Erongo that is still pending. LPM need to do better there in order to hold on to their third position, because, AR doesn't have a base. It's just a youth-centric party. And the youth are all over the country, and they are just taking small numbers here, but when you tally them, they keep rising. And if that trend continues, they might actually be very lucky to sneak into third place at last minute.
I see. So
Yeah.
you think that they just might?
Yeah, it's very possible because the trend for AR has been like that. And, you know, for other parties, you know, like for SWAPO, people say, oh, SWAPO is in the lead now because a lot of results from the north, where it commands its base, have been released. For AR, there's nothing specific for them to say that they are an Erongo party, they are a Zambezi party. They are just a normal party there.
As we can see there, the results, Landless People's Movement, 38,046, taking 6.46% of those, and Popular Democratic Movement, 4.23%, and 24,944. These are, of course, the National Assembly results.
Yeah, absolutely. And
then on the right there again, affirmative repositioning, 35,924. And again, these are the National Assembly results.
Yeah. We were just, me and my CEO earlier, we sat in my office and we were saying what will be the likely amount of seats required, number of votes required for a seat. And we are projecting 11,500. So if our calculation is correct, so they would have at least 3 seats already with that number there on the screen. But I mean, only 40%, slightly over 40% of the total vote has come through yet. So those numbers will increase or even decrease perhaps. But I see them. The pattern has been established. They are just increasing.
The pattern has been established, but do you think this could be one of those last-minute changes, or something like that? Like something just happens in the last minute that shifts everything?
No. I don't think so. I think what we are seeing now, at more than 50% of the counting, that is likely to carry on. It will be highly unprecedented if anything radical happens. So we are going to see exactly the trend that we have seen so far. I don't think with the remaining points, votes, that anything
drastic might happen.
No, I don't foresee that.
All right.
If it happens, as a matter of fact, serious questions might be asked.
Okay, all right, Tova, thank you so very much for joining me today. This has been Election Watch. Again, for all the updated results, visit our website, elections.my.na. We'll be updating you as all the results come in. From me, Diana Master, and Tova Njabela, we'll be seeing you again pretty soon.